In 1957, a man walked into a government office in New Delhi, India, presented a set of official-looking documents stamped with what appeared to be authentic government seals, and sold the Taj Mahal to a businessman for a sum equivalent to several $1,000s. The buyer walked out believing he had just purchased one of the most famous monuments in the world. He had purchased worthless paper from one of the greatest con artists who ever lived. His name was Mithilesh Kumar Srivastava, but across India he was known simply as Natwarlal, a name that became so synonymous with deception that it entered the Hindi language itself. Today, in India, if someone calls you a Natwarlal, they are calling you a swindler. He sold the Taj Mahal not once, not twice, 3 separate times to 3 separate buyers over the course of his career. And that was nowhere near the most extraordinary part of his story. Natwarlal was arrested and convicted multiple times. He was sentenced to prison repeatedly across several decades, and he escaped from custody, from courtrooms, from prisons 10 separate times. The last time he escaped, he was 84 years old. This is the story of the man India could simply never hold. Welcome back to Plain English Guide. Today's story comes from India and spans nearly 6 decades of audacity, deception, and one of the most remarkable records of evading justice in criminal history. This is based on documented accounts of Mithilesh Kumar Srivastava, known as Natwarlal. Let's get into it. Natwarlal was born in 1912 in a small village in the state of Bihar in northeastern India. His family was desperately poor, subsistence farmers in a region where drought and crop failure were constant threats. From childhood, Natwarlal understood one thing with absolute clarity. Poverty was a trap that most people never escaped, and he decided very early that he would not be most people. What distinguished Natwarlal from others in his position was not physical strength or connections or luck. It was his extraordinary ability to read people, to understand what they wanted to believe, what they feared, and what they would overlook if the surface presentation was convincing enough. These were skills he refined through observation and necessity long before he ever committed his first crime. Understanding why Natwarlal became a con artist requires understanding the India he grew up in. Under British colonial rule, the gap between those with connections to power and those without was enormous and largely insurmountable through legitimate means. Official documents, government stamps, letters of authority, these were the tools of a class. Natwarlal was born outside of. He learned to replicate them. Natwarlal never described himself as a criminal. In interviews later in his life, he consistently framed what he did as a form of redistribution, taking from those who had accumulated wealth through connections he was never given access to. Whether one accepts that framing or not, it explains the targets he consistently chose. He rarely defrauded ordinary poor people. His marks were businessmen, bureaucrats, and the aspirationally wealthy. Natwarlal's method was built on one foundational insight, that people who want to believe a deal is real will help you convince them. He spent weeks preparing for each con, studying the language and formatting of official government documents, practicing the signatures of real officials whose names he had researched, and creating stamped paperwork of remarkable quality using materials he sourced carefully over time. The Taj Mahal Con was his most famous, and he ran a version of it 3 times across different decades. The basic structure was always the same. Natwarlal would approach a wealthy businessman, usually someone newly arrived to Delhi who wanted to make a significant investment, presenting himself as a government official with authority to arrange the private sale of a national monument that was allegedly being considered for commercial redevelopment. He would produce paperwork, stamped, signed, and formatted to appear entirely official, describing the terms of the sale, the government's reasoning, and the extraordinary opportunity being offered at a price far below the monument's real value. The price itself was part of the con. It was never a figure so large as to seem impossible, always just within reach of someone who believed they were getting the deal of a lifetime. The buyers were not foolish people. They were people who wanted something badly enough to overlook the questions they should have asked. No legitimate government sale of a national monument happens through a single intermediary in a private office. But the desire to be the man who purchased the Taj Mahal was powerful enough to suspend the skepticism that should have stopped them. Every single time, the Taj Mahal was his headline act, but not his only one. Natwarlal also successfully sold the Red Fort, the historic Mughal fortress in Delhi, on at least 2 occasions. He sold the Indian Parliament building once. He forged the signatures of multiple Indian prime ministers on documents conferring various forms of authority. He ran land fraud, investment fraud, and identity impersonation schemes across dozens of Indian states over 5 decades. Investigators who eventually catalogued his full known criminal activity estimated he had committed fraud across 22 Indian states, making him not just a prolific con artist, but one who operated at a genuinely national scale. He adapted constantly. When one identity became too known, he created another. When one state became too risky, he moved to the next. He was always moving, always ahead, always building the next version of himself. Natwarlal was first arrested in the 1940s and spent stretches in prison throughout his career. But confinement never held him for long. He escaped from police custody during transfers on multiple occasions, twice, by simply walking away from distracted officers during busy public spaces. He escaped from courtrooms during hearings. He escaped from prison facilities. 10 documented escapes across a career spanning 6 decades. The most remarkable escape came in 1996, when Natwarlal, then in his mid-80s, was brought to court in Kanpur for sentencing. While being escorted through the courthouse, he simply walked away from his guards in the crowd. An 84-year-old man who had spent decades in and out of Indian prisons walked out of a courthouse, disappeared into the city, and was never officially confirmed in custody again. India's most wanted con artist had made his final exit. Why was Natwarlal never permanently stopped? Several factors combined to make him extraordinarily difficult to contain. India, in the mid-20th century, had significant administrative fragmentation. Different states maintained separate records with limited coordination between them. Natwarlal exploited this gap systematically, operating just long enough in each jurisdiction before the paperwork caught up with him. He also had a gift for altering his appearance and manner sufficiently between identities that witnesses from previous cases often failed to recognize him in later ones. Combined with the sheer volume of documentation his cases generated, which slowed prosecution significantly, and a population that often regarded him with a mixture of condemnation and admiration. The system simply could not keep pace with a man who had been outsmarting it since the 1940s. Natwarlal's legacy in India is complicated. He is simultaneously a convicted serial fraudster who caused genuine financial harm to real people, and a folk figure whose audacity against institutions of power earned him a strange admiration in a culture that has always had a nuanced relationship with trickster figures. Bollywood films were made loosely inspired by his story. His name became a word. His escapes became legend. The lessons from Natwarlal's story remained relevant. Lesson 1. A document that looks official is not the same as a document that is official. Real government transactions involving national assets are publicly recorded, independently verifiable, and never arranged through a single private intermediary. If someone is offering you something that should require an entire government apparatus to execute, and they are doing it alone in a private office, that is your answer. Lesson 2. The desire to be the person who got the extraordinary deal is one of the most exploited vulnerabilities in human psychology. Every one of Natwarlal's buyers wanted to be the man who purchased the Taj Mahal at a fraction of its value. That desire, that specific vanity, was the actual tool he used. Not the fake documents, not the forged signatures. The documents only worked because the desire came first. The Taj Mahal still stands. It has never been sold. It never will be. Natwarlal is believed to have died sometime in the early 2000s, though no confirmed death record was ever formally established, a fitting final ambiguity for a man whose entire life defied documentation. In India today, his name remains in the language, a permanent linguistic monument to the most audacious con artist the subcontinent ever produced. Hit subscribe for more real stories. This video is based on documented accounts of Mithilesh Kumar Srivastava, known as Natwarlal. Some details have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only.